Hi guys, welcome to my channel. In today's tutorial, I'm going to be showing you how to cut and sew this beautiful dress with a mesh yoke. This is a very easy tutorial and it's beginner friendly. Make sure you watch up to the end and don't forget to subscribe if you'd love to watch more sewing and pattern drafting videos from me. I post new videos every single week. This is the fabric that I'm going to use to make my dress. As you can see, I have my cotton fabric here. This is cotton, and I also have my mesh, black mesh, and it stretches. As you can see, it's stretchy. So this mesh is going to be used for the yoke and also for my sleeve. So I'll be tracing my pattern directly onto my fabric, and as you can see, I have two pieces of fabric. One is my front and one will be the back part of the dress. So first I'll put away the back piece and I'll start by tracing the front piece. So I will start by putting my shoulder to shoulder measurement, which is 8 inches. I got this by placing the measuring tape from one shoulder to the other, then I divided by 2. So my shoulder to shoulder measurement is 8 inches. I'll place it right here, and also note that my fabric is on fold. It is folded and it has a center front. So from the center front, that's where I'll put my 8 inches of shoulder to shoulder measurement. I'll place with my shock. Then next I'm going to put my neck width measurement, which was taken by placing my measuring tape around my neck, then I divided by 4. So my neck width is 3.5 inches. I'll put my neck width. Then next I'll put my neck depth of 4 inches. Here you can just determine how deep you want your neckline to be. It's up to you. Then I'll connect the neck width to my neck depth by curving as I am doing. Then next I'm going to slant my shoulder by coming down by 1/2 inch on my shoulder line. Then I'll connect the slanted shoulder to my neck width, as you can see. So this is the slanted shoulder. It's very important to slant our shoulders because our shoulders are slanted, they are not straight. The next I'm going to find my armhole by placing the measuring tape around my armhole, then divide by 2. So my armhole measurement was 8 inches. I'll put the measuring tape from the slanted shoulder down to 8 inches. So this is my armhole. The next I'm going to curve my armhole. First I'm going to draw a vertical line downwards, then horizontally outwards. So to curve my armhole, I'll find the midpoint of my armhole. Then on my midpoint, I'm going to go inwards by 1/2 inch. Then I'm going to curve by connecting my slanted shoulder point to the 1/2 inch inside, then curve outwards like that. Next, I'm going to find my shoulder to bust measurement by placing the measuring tape from my shoulder to my bust line, which is 10 inches. Then next, I'm going to find my under bust measurement, which is just 3 inches. So the under bust is 3 inches. It's a standard measurement. It's just 3 inches. For taller people, it could be 3.5, but for average size, it's 3 inches. The next, I'm going to find my shoulder to waist measurement, which is 17 inches. I'll place the measuring tape from my shoulder line all the way down to my waist, 17 inches. The next, I'm going to find my shoulder to hip measurement by placing the measuring tape from my shoulder all the way down to my hip. So my shoulder to hip measurement is 24 inches. That is 24 inches of my shoulder to hip measurement. I'm going to draw a horizontal line. Then the next thing I'm going to do is I'll find the circumference measurement of my bust, waist, hip, and under bust. So I'll put my measuring tape around my bust circumference, then divide by 4. So my bust circumference divided by 4 plus wherein is and seam allowance is what I'm going to put on this horizontal line. I'll just place it on my measuring tape, so it's 9 inches. Then I'll add wearing ease and seam allowance. Then I'll go on my underbust and I'm going to do the same. I'll go on my waistline. I'll divide it by 4. I'll divide the circumference by 4, then add wearing ease and seam allowance. I'll go on my hip line. I'm going to divide my hip circumference by 4 plus wearing ease and seam allowance. Wearing ease is very important, especially if you're using non-stretch fabric. Then I'm going to connect these points. And connect the hip to waist with my hip curve ruler. So I'll just get my hip curve ruler and connect this curve part because it's nice and curved. Then for the full length of my dress, I'll determine how long I want my dress to be. If you want yours to be very long, you can make it long or short, it's up to you. So I want mine to be just knee high. That's how long I want my dress to be. So I'll put my full length of my dress. Then for the circumference of my full length of the dress, I'll get the measurement on my hip circumference. So first let me measure how long I want my dress to be. So this is the full length of the dress. Then I'll get the measurement on my circumference or on my hip. I'll subtract 2. So my hip was 12 inches here. I'll subtract 2. I'll use 10 inches. The 10 inches is what I'll put as the circumference of the full length of my dress because I want it to be kind of pencil. So I'll just put that hip circumference measurement minus 2 on the full length of my dress. Then I'm going to connect with the ruler from my hip to the full length of my dress. Sorry guys, my camera wasn't reaching the full length properly. So I'll just connect from my hip to the full length of the dress. I'll connect with my ruler, hip to full length of the dress. So I'm just connecting the hip to full length of the dress, and remember I penciled it. The next I'm just going to cut it out, but before I cut out, let's make the yoke part of the dress. So for the yoke, from the shoulder line, I'm going to go downwards by 7 inch on my shoulder line. So this is the yoke part. I'll plot 7 inch and I'm going to cut this out. So I'll draw a horizontal line and I'm going to cut this out and make my yoke for the dress. So after cutting this out, I'm going to trace it on the mesh fabric. So I've just cut out my dress and the yoke is separated. As you can see, the top part, which is the yoke, so this is out because I want the top part to have a mesh. So I'm going to fold my mesh in the middle and I'm going to trace the yoke part on my mesh fabric, as you can see. So this is the part for the top. I'm just going to trace it out and I'll show you how it looks once it's done. And also I'm going to add seam allowance because remember I'll be connecting this mesh yoke to my main fabric, to the other cotton fabric. So I'll add seam allowance of 1 inch around it. And that is the seam allowance. I'm also going to add seam allowance on the top. Then I'm going to cut it out, and then I'll show you how to sew. So make sure you keep watching and don't miss any part. So I've just cut it out, and the next step will be the sewing part. So as you can see, I have the front piece of the dress and the yoke, and also the back piece of the dress. So for the back piece of the dress, what I did was I traced out the exact front piece onto another fabric. Then I added zip allowance for the back piece because the back is going to have zip allowance. Then after this, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to trace out the lining. I'll get the front piece and trace it onto the lining and form the lining, and I'll do the same for the back piece, but the yoke will have no lining. So this is the front part of my dress. I'll just place it on top of the lined fabric. I'll be using this black lining fabric. So I'm just going to get my tailor's chalk and trace out. So as you can see, I've traced out my lining. But for the lining, you also have to note that the lining has to be 2 inches shorter than the dress. So I'm going to take off the 2 inches of the lining. I will show you the reason why I'm taking off the 2 inches, so just keep watching. So I'll just trace 2 inches and I'm going to cut it off the lining because my lining should be shorter than the dress. So I'm just going to trim off the excess 2 inches and remain with a shorter lining. I'll do the same for my back. I'll trace the lining for the back on another fabric, but remember the yoke will have no lining. So once I put this on top of the dress, you'll notice that the lining is shorter than the dress. So after cutting my lining, I placed the lining on top of the fabric. The right side of the fabric was facing the lining. Then I took it on the sewing machine and I stitched from the hemline. Then after stitching with a straight stitch, I'm going to turn it and show you how it looks after stitching. So this is the reason why I said the lining has to be shorter than the fabric. After turning it, I'm going to show you how it looks from the inside. On the hemline, if you'll see clearly, part of the fabric is protruding inside. That is why I wanted the lining to be shorter than the fabric, because once the lining is pulled up here, the hemline should not only have the black lining. I want part of the inside of the hemline to have the fabric as shown below, as you can see right here. So this is the reason why the lining has to be shorter than the main fabric. And now that I have put the lining, I'm going to put the yoke on the top part of the dress. So to do this, I'll just get the mesh yoke. This is the mesh yoke for the dress. I'll place it on the right side of the fabric. I'm going to put down the lining and put it right here. I'll sandwich it between the fabric and the lining. So this is what I'm going to do. I'll just place it as I am doing. Then I'll pull my lining upwards and sandwich the yoke mesh between the fabric and the lining. Remember, the lining is shorter, so I have to pull it a bit, then pin it, and then stitch on the sewing machine. I'm going to stitch right here. So I'm just going to take it to the sewing machine and stitch it. Then after stitching, I'll show you how it looks. So I just finished stitching with my stretch stitch. Then next, I'm going to turn this out and reveal my yoke on the right side of the fabric. So this is my beautiful yoke for the front part of the dress. As you can see, it looks so nice. If you love this video, please don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more sewing tutorials. So now that I have placed my yoke in place on the right side of the fabric, I'll move on to the back side of the fabric and show you how to work. So this is the back side of the fabric. As you can see, I have one fabric and lining and the other fabric with lining, and the center back is separated because I'm going to put the zipper. So what I'll do is I'm going to sew on the hemline, and also note that the lining is shorter for the back as well, and the back doesn't have a yoke, the mesh yoke. So what I'll do is I'll start with one piece. I'll place the lining right side of fabric facing the lining, then I'm going to stitch on the hemline and also on the shoulder line and neckline. I'm going to stitch as well. Since the lining is shorter, I'll pull it after stitching, and I'll stitch the shoulders and the hemline, but not the sides. I'm not going to sew the armhole yet. Then I'm going to turn it inside out after I finished stitching. Remember, the right side of fabric is facing the lining. So I just finished sewing the hemline, and as you can see, the right side of fabric after turning it out is protruding, and that is the reason why the lining has to be shorter. As you can see, the right side of fabric is showing there, and I've also sewed the shoulder and the neckline. I've turned it inside out already, and I gave it a good press. I'll do the same for the other fabric, then I'll show you what's next. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to get this neckline shaped piece of fabric, and I'll sew it onto the neckline of the mesh yoke. So what I'll do is I'll turn the fabric from the inside where there's the lining. Then I'm going to sew. As you can see, I'll put a straight stitch around this curved neckline from the inside where there's a lining. Then after sewing, as you can see, I'm going to turn it to the right side. So first start by sewing from the wrong side, then turn it on the right side. Then I'm going to do a top stitch after turning it to the right side. So let me just turn it properly so that you can see clearly. So I've just turned it nicely on the right side, as you can see. So I'm going to run another straight stitch around that curve. So I've just stitched around the curve, and as you can see, it looks so beautiful right there. Please don't forget to give this video a thumbs up. Then the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to get my back piece of the dress and place it on top of the front piece, right sides facing together like that. Then I'm going to stitch from the wrong side on the shoulder lines, on the shoulders. So this is one side, the right. Let me place the left as well on the other side. Then I'm going to stitch on the shoulder seams. So just align them together properly. Then I'm going to sew on the shoulder seam with my straight stitch from my sewing machine. Remember, the back doesn't have a yoke. So I'm just going to sew on the shoulders to start with. Then after sewing the shoulders, I'm going to sew around the sides. After sewing around the sides, I'm going to turn it inside out. So as you can see, my shoulder seams have been sewn together and the sides have been sewn together. Then next, I'm going to sew the sleeve to the dress. Sorry, I couldn't film when I was cutting the sleeve. My phone had a technical fault. But if you want to learn how to draft a basic sleeve, I'll link another video in the description below. So what I'll do is I'll put the sleeve right in like this in my armhole. I'll pin it around, then sew on the sewing machine. Then after sewing the sleeves, as you can see, I've put both sleeves, the left and right. The next thing I'll do is I'm going to put my zipper and close the vent on the back of the dress. So I've just finished sewing the zipper and the dress is finished. This is the final beautiful product, guys. Thank you so much for watching, and don't forget to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe if you found this tutorial useful. Bye and see you next time.